Before I'm going to actually start the review of the Dell Latitude E50-270, I have a question for you. Please check the specs and tell me if you can find what's wrong with them. Just in case you don't get what I mean, we are in mid-2016 here at the moment, and this basic test configuration still comes with a TN panel and a resolution of 1366 by 768 and a spinning hard drive. In my opinion, that's a total no-go, and I've talked about that to Dell. I've told them if they want an actual positive review, at least give me the most popular version or the highest end version, because then my rating would have looked a lot different, because there is a 1080p version with an SSD, and then most of my complaints would have been gone. And I actually want to just start off with the design build quality. What I know by now that the 3 different tiers have actual different lid materials, because this basic version, as you can see here, has plain plastic. It is still rugged, but it definitely doesn't look premium or anything like that. There is also the mid-tier version that has a magnesium that is soft touch coated with a rubberized padding or something like that, and that one actually feels a lot nicer, is my personal preference. The highest end version has a carbon fiber one that picks up a lot of fingerprints but also feels quite premium. The backing is always the same rugged plastic. I don't have a problem with that. It really looks sturdy. We have always plastic feet. I wish still would have been rubber feet so it wouldn't slide so much on the table. I guess this version will be the last one with the docking port, because they are going towards the USB Type-C, and here we have some ventilations going on, and that's it. On the left side we can see the USB 3.0 port for the ventilation, the SC card reader. On the front we can see the front bottom firing stereo speakers. On the left you can see the headphone jack. We have the SD card. As you can see, it jumps out quite nice, but at least the whole card fits in, which is okay. USB Type 3 with always on. SIM card tray, because this is the LTE version, along with Kensington lock. And on the back we have all the good ones. Gigabit Ethernet and VGA if you still need that. Full-size HDMI, USB 3.0 once again, and the port for charging. Okay, this is still not a version with USB Type-C, but this will, I think, will be a change next year. So overall, it is a nice device. It feels very sturdy. It's definitely not the thinnest one and not the lightest one, but it feels very rugged, it feels very solid, and something that doesn't really bend or something like that. So in terms of that, it's fine, and we have a great amount of ports, which is nice to see. If we open it up, which can be done with one hand, with a little bit of effort, we can see one of the highlights here. That is the keyboard, because I'm a big fan of the Latitude series keyboards. You have 2-level backlit, and you have a great amount of key travel. It is, as you can hear, super quiet, really nicely dampened, and has a really great typing experience. We don't have any media keys, but since this is a business device, that's okay. The track pointer mission is a little bit of a thing that will upset a few people because they still like it. We have the trackpad that works out really well as well. I would wish for a little bit less friction, so a glass would have been nicer, but maybe that will change next year as well. The 2 buttons work nice. So in overall, keyboard and trackpad are doing a great job. Especially the keyboard is something that I absolutely love, because the typing experience is just so great. No complaints here at all. So overall, this is a good thing. We also have a fingerprint reader that works, I would say la. So okay, kind of what. The plastic feels good. So let's get into the display, and I will just briefly mention that because this is the 768 version with an TN panel. As you can see, we have quite terrible viewing angles, and I have to actually say this is not even a bad TN panel. It just is a TN panel. That is my main gripe. It gets moderately bright, no problem here at all. It doesn't get super dim, so as you can see here, for a few people this could already be a little bit too bright in the dark, but I guess a businessman will use it in a bright environment, and then it's okay. But the resolution isn't anything to brag about. The colors aren't really accurate. You don't have the best contrast. It gets the job done totally, but if you want an actual nice experience, especially in 2016 where we have so many 1080p sources by these days, I just think that's not quite good enough. So don't get me wrong, for what it is, the panel is actually quite okay, and the viewing experience after a while with a higher brightness was okay, but I can't recommend this resolution, especially since the 1080p version is available. Now let's check the sound. Not that it's really that important for a business device, but let's see what I think of that. I think that's actually good enough, because actually this is one of the better speakers of a Latitude series device, because it's actually quite loud. Overall balance is nice, a nice amount of bass, the highs are quite clear, but it still has the same issue as pretty much every Dell device that I've had. The speakers without the software that we have is not that good because it boosts the speaker a lot, and what I always like to say is it is an average speaker boosted beyond its limits, because in certain, let's say, YouTube videos where the quality isn't always on the highest levels, then you will have a lot of distortion, which can be quite annoying. If the source is properly done without any peaking and so, the quality is quite good, but it is possible without distortion. I've seen this on other laptops. So this is a minor gripe, but overall this is actually one of the better speakers already. Okay, so now let's get into the performance, and here we can see one thing. We have the spinning hard drive that I've talked about, and I'm just not happy with those values. This is not good. It gets the job done, but it also comes with the caveat that it is spinning all the time, so it's audible all the time. So that's already a big deal break. Of course, apps will launch a lot slower and so on. In terms of the performance though, I have nothing to complain. The i5 Skylake does a great job. As you can see, scrolling with the mouse works great, and with the trackpad absolutely as well. It's very reliable. It gets the job handled. Awesome. The Skylake does a great job, but if we talk about the heat and noise real quick, as you can see here, I did a stress test, and I was actually very pleased with the noise. The heat was a little bit on the higher level, but it was not concerning because I got CPU values after half an hour of about 75 to 79 degrees, which you can see here, and then it dropped like 100 megahertz, which is still something that I wouldn't call throttling at all, so everything is fine. The RAM got up to 56 degrees and the HDD to 38, so all is good here. In terms of heat, it doesn't really get warm to the touch, because on the bottom it got like to, let me check, 35 degrees in the colder areas and 43 in the middle at its hottest spot, where you usually don't have your legs, and then you also won't use, I think, the highest CPU load, I would say. So that is all fine, because it is a super quiet device if it wouldn't be for the HDD, because you hear that all the time. The fan, it normally uses something that you will never hear, and even on the full load it was so subtle that still the HDD was louder. So in terms of noise, they did an absolutely great job once you have the SSD in it, and then you will get a perfectly silent, super quiet experience, even on the full CPU load. No problem. It doesn't get really super warm. The CPU, yes, but it's still within the margin where it can handle everything quite nicely. So let's get to the battery. A full charge depends on what preset you take. Takes from something to close to a little bit less than 2 hours to even 3 hours and more. Really depends on which setting you take. I would say the normal one would take about 2.5 hours. And about the battery life, I would say that I'm actually not that happy with, because we don't have the biggest battery in it. And let me quickly check, because with so many devices lately I forgot which version I have. I have the one with the 46 watt hours, and I got the average battery life of about 4.5 hours with a brightness of, depending, because you can actually use it already with 30%, but you don't really get a great experience. And if you want an acceptable, nice experience, you will need at least 60-70%, and then it will drain a little bit harder. So if you stay below 50, you can get even 5 hours and more, but usually I would say 4.5 is what I got. With a little bit of an intensive use, I tend to drain my device a little bit earlier, or use them with a higher brightness. So I would say most people should already get 5.5 hours out of them, and I would say that's okay, but not really something groundbreaking, considering this is just the 768p version, not even the full HD one. But of course the SSD would help with the battery consumption as well. Now in terms of software, there's not too much to tell. We have the same things as we always do. There is a little bit of Dell load preloaded. There is the software to change the audio, if you can quickly check that, but it's not really something super special to talk about, because it's pretty much the same always. As you can see here you can use, and I think it just does a little bit of a too big job, because it boosts everything a little bit too much. But there is a lot of customization. If you turn it completely off though, the sound will be quite bad. Of course you can also adjust the trackpad and all that, but it's pretty much the basic average stuff. So to get it to an end, as I said already, if I would have had the 1080p version with the SSD, all my complaints would have been gone, because the display would have been higher res and just nicer to look at, just what it should be at this point in time. And the SSD would speed up the whole feel of the device, because it felt very sluggish in terms of app loading times, system loaded quite slow, and the access times are just the biggest issue. And if you move files a lot, you will definitely notice that it is not a fast SSD. So that's why I won't give it a great rating for this basic version. But I've said already, if I would have had the 1080p version, which I guess from all the 1080p panels I know from Dell should be definitely satisfying, and with an SSD, the performance of the whole device would have felt a lot more nice. But otherwise, the build quality is still absolute top. It's not the thinnest and lightest one, but therefore it feels super rugged and great. The keyboard is one of the highlights because typing experience is absolutely great. The trackpad does a really great job. The speakers are actually not that bad for a Latitude device. The battery life is still acceptable. The performance is very, very good because the i5 Skylake is an absolute top performer and you can do pretty much everything you would expect from a business device at all. And then there is the software with the added security functions here with the fingerprint reader, and since this is a Dell Latitude device, you also get the business support. So depending on which price you get and which configuration, it is definitely a recommendable device. As I said already, and I've talked to Dell about that, that this version should have not gone out to the reviewers, because you could have at least added, if I would express my ratings in percentages, at almost like 10% more just because of the display, because this diminished my experience, at least from a reviewer standpoint. For a business user, it could be very different. If you just need to have a display that shows you all the stuff and you don't need the fastest active times, it's fine. But I think if you want to be an efficient business user, you want to get your stuff done fast, and then an SSD will help you a lot. So I would say I give you all the pros and cons, told you everything to know about the device. And if any further questions or something to say, just leave that down in the comments. I hope you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more, and I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.